All right. Hi, guys. So this is the deep dive for the night demo. I call this the simple demo. We're gonna begin to take a close look at exactly what's in here. Uh, Brief recap. When you hit play, you've got one character that can move around. He has a little sword animation, walking animation. Okay, so this is idle animation, walking animation. He has jump. Jumping animation is one frame, but he can jump, and then he can do a sword attack. Okay, and then we see that the rest of the characters are kind of changing their directions and their perspective based on kind of like the way the camera is looking at the scene. All right, now how exactly does that happen? First, let's take a quick look at this character prefab. So the SpriteMan demos come with everything as prefabs. They're going to be here under SpriteMan demo prefab characters. This is the actual prefabs, but they're made of a lot more components, which are going to be found here underneath models. And underneath models, we have the cartoon characters, which is our knight is here underneath cartoon. And then there's also like a humanoid male. All right. So underneath knight, here we have various animations. Okay, so our prefab, our knight, has an animator, which is this, and our animator contains the different actions that we saw he can do. So he can stand idle, he can run, this animation in this state. He can jump, which is this animation in this state, and he can do a sword attack. So that's all the animation related stuff pertaining to the knight. Next, we also have the sprite sheet. Okay, so the sprite sheet is this thing. I mean, if you open it in an editor, in a preview, it's simply a sprite sheet with all the different frames and all the different positions. And here, what we've done is actually we've sliced this sprite sheet into frames that are 32 by 32. Okay, and we've set all of their pivots to be at the bottom of the sprite. So that's what's in here. And then a template, we'll get into templates at a later point. For now, this is the kind of full overview of what's inside this character. More things to note are the actual Sprite Manager component. So for Sprite Manager to actually work, you have to start with a top level object. So you just start with an object, and then you have to create another object underneath that has a sprite renderer. Okay, so it needs a sprite renderer, and this has to be a child of this one. And then to that we can attach a sprite manager. And why would we do that? So we do that in order to, okay, once we turned off the billboarder and the sprite manager, and the other thing to note is that we also added a billboarder. So this is a sprite manager billboarder. Okay, it's here from SpriteMan 3D scripts billboarder. So our managed sprite here is going to have a sprite manager component and a billboarder. And the billboarder piece, as you can see, I've turned it off on this one to show you exactly what it ends up doing. The billboarder is the part that's responsible for making your sprite character look correct for the camera. And the Sprite Manager piece is the guy that will change the perspective. Now that I turned the Sprite Manager on, it changes the frame of animation and the correct perspective of like walking direction for the character. So you see like one controls one and one controls the other controls the other. Now that we turn this back on, we see that they have various that the components work. All right. Now Sprite Manager used to have a billboard feature. I mean, and it's still there and it still works. So when I turn this on, it does the exact same thing that the new Billboarder does. Except the Billboarder, I recommend even in the help menus, or sorry, in the online help, to use the Billboarder instead of the billboard option on Sprite Manager because this now has various features. And let's take a quick look at these billboard features. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the base prefab and just change the billboarding settings on the prefab. So first we're going to go without any of these selected. It's still billboarding at this point. It just doesn't have any of these options set, any of these special options. So what does that look like when we're looking at a game? Now without billboard V or pointing a camera, basically it will use the camera's kind of like the camera's pointing in this direction. So all of the characters are kind of gonna be pointing towards that direction. And without billboard V, it's not going to do this vertical alignment to the camera. Okay, so that's what happens when we turn that off. That's what that does. And then when we do point at camera, you see it'll start rotating it around to look directly towards the camera. So this is probably like the most realistic, let's say, 3D type of view. If this was like a 3D object, see it's pointing directly towards the top of the object, and the rotation kind of matches it exactly. However, this is also a sprite, so that looks a little wonky. And when you move it around, I mean it looks like he's sliding around. So these are just different options that you can try out based on. And when both options are selected, basically what it'll end up looking like. Again, if we make these changes in the actual prefab, so we apply it to everybody. What does it actually look like? That's kind of how a scene would look like if if all of these things were turned to billboard and point a camera. And if we didn't do the that vertical piece, now it looks turn it off for this guy too. Now they keep their vertical alignment so that you can kind of have like a different type of special effect, but then they will keep they will also point directly more towards the camera. So these are different things that you can try out and see which which billboarding features you kind of like the best for your game. By default, SpriteMan basically comes in this setting, and so this is the one that matches the Sprite Manager billboarding. And this is how that looks. So always kind of point directly towards the camera. It'll keep the character kind of based on the camera plane. So as the camera's pointing like in that direction, it billboards everything to just kind of look like that. And yeah. So okay, I've covered the billboarder. I've covered the some of the the animator, some of the pieces on here. There's also a script that I've added. It's a very simple. It's the very basic controller that um, that you see in action here. This is the person player controller. That gives you some very basic controls for walk speed, run speed, the ability to jump velocity, um, and like a little slash attack, a simple attack, and it binds that to the keyboard.